Hello and welcome back. Enrichment topic is serious and we got a double sum, a double sigma. I think I've done a double sigma the other day and I thought I'll do a second one. The one I done the other day was actually fairly simple because although it does look scary, it had infinity here and it turned out to be just a double summation of geometric progressions to infinity. This one might involve again geometric progressions, but we got an n in there, so we have to be a little bit careful with how we manipulate this particular expression. Okay, where do we start with this particular thing now is the question. Well, first of all, as I explained in the last lecture, is just do something which is fairly obvious, which is just to tidy a little bit the summand, in analogy to the integrand. The bit inside both the sums at the moment. So this is from m, runs from m is equal to 0 to n, and it's from n is equal to 0 to infinity. And I can definitely write this as 1 over 2 to the m times 1 over 2 to the n. Rules of indices, nothing complicated in there. That's inside both the sums, inside this, and of course this sum is inside the outer sum. So the question is now, what bit I can pull outside the first, the inner sigma if you want. Can I pull one of them? Can I pull both of them? Can I pull none of them? At first glance, you're looking at the m is equal to 0 and the n on the top, and you just think there's some m-n-n dependence and therefore I cannot pull anything out. It's actually wrong. We can pull something out. I'm going to write these stops a little bit differently, because we write them like this, but in fact we should be writing them fully from m is equal to 0 to m is equal to n, and from n is equal to 0 to n equals infinity if you want. So if we look at what is the variable on the inner sum is not n. N is just a constant up to the point n where n is fixed. It's an integer of course, but it's fixed. So this has only m dependence, which means the term 1 over 2 to the n can actually come in front of this particular sigma. So I'm going to do that next. Sigma and sigma. I'm going to revert to the original notation. I hate writing n is equal to infinity. So from n is equal to 0, and the 1 over n, it goes on the outside, 1 over 2 to the n, sigma from m is equal to 0. If you want, you can write from m is equal to n or just simply n. And what I'm left with in there is 1 over 2 to the m. This is the argument of the sigma, and the argument of the outer sigma is all of this together. So what can I do now? What can I sum from what I see up there? Well, quite clearly, I can sum this bit here. It's a geometric progression. I'm going to write up here a few terms so we can all happy that it is what we think it is. So it's going to be, when m is equal to 0, 1 over 2 to the 0 plus 1 over 2 to the 1 plus 1 over 2 squared plus dot dot dot. But this is not the sum to infinity. It's not like the ones we've done the other day where this was run to infinity. It is actually finite and it stops. When does it stop? Is when m becomes n. So the last term is 2 to the n. So all of this is this particular sum, which we can actually find because this is a GP, geometric progression, with first term 1, because 2 to the 0 of course 1, and the common ratio is a half, and the sum of such a progression, sum of I don't know, in this particular case n terms, because it's 2 to the n in there, is the sum of n terms. You have to be a bit careful with this one. It's very easy to go wrong. If you think of this is now 1, 2, 3, and therefore if I was adding up to 2 squared, I'd be seeing that 2 to the power of 2, and I'd be saying there's 2 terms. No, they're not. They're 3 terms. So it's actually the sum of, I'm going to write as n plus 1 if you want. Okay, it's a little confusing. Let me just, I'm running out of variables. I'm going to write the formula as we know it for geometric progressions. Sum of k is equal a 1 minus r to the power of k over 1 minus r, where this is first term, common ratio, and k number of terms. The number of terms we have in this particular progression is n plus 1. So Sn plus 1 is equal to a, which is conveniently 1, I'm not going to write it, 1 minus a half, the common ratio, to the power of n plus 1, k and k, divided by 1 minus a half. Simplify this a little bit better. And this is 1 minus a half, which is of course a half, and therefore it's going to be 2 times 1 minus a half to the power of n plus 1, close brackets. And if we want to simplify that further, we can actually write this as 2 multiplying the bracket minus, when I times it by 2, it will reduce the power of a half back to the power of n. I hope you can all see this particular one. Okay, so let's return to our sum now. This quantity that we just evaluated here is just merely this bit. So we can start putting some of this information in. I'm going to write it, I'm going to make some space and write it on the far left. So far we have sigma from n is equal to 0 to infinity, and I still got the 1 over 2 to the n, that's this bit here, and all of this turned out to be, I'm going to use a bracket, 2 minus a half to the power of n, close bracket, and let's put another bracket so it can look very impressively scary. Okay, so far I think we're okay. I forgot my sponge there. Let's think about our next move. I'm going to wrap this off. I hope I haven't made any mistakes so far. All right, what's a sensible move to do from there? Well, quite clearly, probably a tidy is in order. I don't particularly like to have this in this particular form. It's going to look a total and utter mess. So let's multiply a few of the bits inside there. So we're going to have from n is equal to 0 to infinity. That's the sum. And 2 times that is going to be 1 over 2 to the power of n minus 1. I hope we can see this particular multiplication. And then we're going to have a minus. We have a half to the n times 1 over 2 to the n. Well, that is in fact, it doesn't really matter how you write it, but I make this 1 over 2 to the n, like this. Okay, so let me just write it up here so we're all happy. Times that, it doesn't really matter which one you change to have it in a sensible form. Maybe you want to change this one to 1 over 2 to the n, and 2 to the n times 2 to the n, you will be adding the powers, and n plus n is 2n. So this is so far what we've got up there. So that's inside the sigma. These are more geometric progressions, but these are sums to infinity, so they will be getting numbers. It's probably better to rewrite this term, because of course 1 over 2 to the power of 2n is the same as 1 over 2 squared all to the n, which of course is the same as 1 over 4 to the n, for simplicity. So I'm not gonna write it again just to make this change, but I'm claiming that this term here can be written in this form, which is a lot easier. So if we look at what this thing will be producing now in this particular case, we've got putting n is equal to 0, we're going to get, of course, 1. Oh wow, we're going to have there quite a strange thing to do. The way I multiplied and the way I wrote it, but timesing this out probably wasn't such a great idea. So I'm just thinking if it's probably better to do an extra line here. Okay, I'm going to put an extra line, and I'm going to write this back to how it was, because it's going to be very confusing otherwise. Even for myself there, I don't want to be thinking a million things at once. So not a major step. All I'm doing is I'm taking it back, this term, back to 2 times 1 over 2 to the n, because it's actually easier. So I'm going to write, let's put the extra line, 2 times 1 over 2 to the n. So that's this item here, which came of course from this, and of course for that is going to be minus 1 over 4 to the n. And I hope we can all see the very last line that I just wrote up there. Okay, so I'm going to split now this particular sum into two sums, and I'm going to factorize these two in front of the first one. I'm going to move out of the way and then we can compare it, because my office is very, very small. So, and I got other stuff on the floor that you cannot see, and one of these days I'll have a bad accident here. 1 over 2 to the n infinity, and then it's a minus sigma 1 over 4 to the n, and again same limits. Okay, have a look at what we got so far. This one, I put the 2 on the outside, and this is 1 over 2 to the n there, and there's of course minus, same of course summation 1 over 4 to the n. Let's make some room. I claim these are now geometric, both of them, they're both sums to infinity. We'll find each of them separately and then we'll put them together. So I'm going to do some side workings for both of them rather than just carrying them inside the main workings. It'll be just a mess, and we'll leave some space there for the answer. I should have checked really what the answer is before I done this question, but I didn't, I forgot. So I'm looking at this bit here. It's 2 to the power of n, starting with n is equal to 0. So it's going to be 1 plus a half plus a quarter plus an eighth plus dot 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 forever. Okay, you will spare me, you can do the workings for that. That is a very well-known geometric progression, and of course this should be equal to 2. You've used of course the sum to infinity formula, which is just for the AS, and of course don't forget this is just this sum here, we got times 2 there to take care of. Okay, so this is part of this sigma. Now this one here, this is going to be n is equal to 0, so it's 1 plus a quarter plus 1/16, not 16th, and then it's 64, and so on. Okay, so that's another GP. For this one I'm going to use the sum to infinity. I don't know what that sums to, some ugly number of some sort. So first term is equal to 1, common ratio is a quarter, and the formula for sum to infinity of a geometric progression is, so long as the common ratio is numerically less than 1, is equal to a 1 minus r. So in this particular case it will be 1 over 1 minus a quarter, which is 1 over 3/4, which I'll make 4/3. Okay, so this is equal to 4/3. All I need to do is to put my bits in. I got a 2 there. Here's my 2. This sigma is there and is equal to 2 minus this sigma turned out to be 4/3, it's up there. So the answer should be 4 take away 4/3. 4 take away 4/3 is 12. Take away 4, which is 8. 8 over 3. So I hope I haven't made any silly errors and you're all laughing at me so far. But I make this particular double sigma question equal to 8/3. I hope you made it too. And who's laughing now? I am.